Welcome to Freedom Lovin'. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 63. And in just a minute, I have part 2 of my interview with Danny Flood. And if you like this podcast, please give us a rating and review on iTunes. If you can just open up iTunes and search for the Freedom Lovin' podcast, and you can go ahead and type in your review there. That would be awesome. And one other thing I wanted to mention is that Danny, actually, if you're enjoying this interview, he has his own podcast, and that's at the Open World Podcast on iTunes. So while you're in iTunes giving Freedom Lovin' a review, go ahead and search for the Open World Podcast, and you'll see his show. And he's got a lot of really cool topics. I just subscribed to it, just getting into it now. And if you like this show, you will probably like his podcast as well. And there's a lot of stuff to learn and a lot of adventure stories and stuff like that. So check that out. And otherwise, I'll be back next week with another podcast with exciting freedom news. And I hope you're doing great. Go out there and build some freedom and enjoy the interview, and we'll talk to you soon. Yeah, so it sounds like you're really organized. Now, how do you deal with the kind of bouncing around? That's one thing I've struggled with traveling is I feel like I have all these ambitions. I schedule this trip, and I'm like, I'm going to get so much done, and these are the hours I'm going to work, and I'm going to do a little play, and then I'm going to work for the afternoon. And then I get to wherever I'm going, and it ends up being like I get nothing done, like not even close to what I was expecting. How do you do that?
You know, Kevin, you said I'm really organized, and I'd say it's a challenge. You know, it's a continual challenge that I'm constantly working on. I look at it like this: if you ever have a problem, let's say you're not being productive. You know, for some reason my productivity has been very low this week. I step back and I look at what are the reasons why. And you know, I've been in Bangkok for the last 2 months, for example, and I've been working really hard with this book launch and getting my everything going, and my productivity was nosediving. You know, and I realized, like, I need to get out of Bangkok. Mm-hmm. You know, I need to get out of here. I started taking, weekend trips. I'd go to Pattaya, I'd go to Hua Hin. I went to Krabi for 4 days. And when I came back, I'm fresh, I'm recharged. I'm ready to go. And I think, that's been really, really critical. That's been one thing. The other thing is that I say, like, okay, I'm not organized. I need to get organized. And then I ask myself, like, this is a problem. This is a chance to grow. So for example, I don't know where to work on a given day. Like I can choose my office, and I'm kind of like, so I've been testing different things to see what makes my productivity the best. So I can work from home, I can work from the treadmill at the fitness room, I can work at the pool, I can work at the coffee shop. And sometimes it's not been working out. So what I've been doing is, like, I'm saying, okay, when I'm writing, for example, I write much faster when I'm not connected to Wi-Fi. Because Wi-Fi, I get inundated. So even email, I'm starting to email people from offline. Because when I go to my inbox, what I mean is I'll write emails offline, and then I'll send them when I'm online. Yeah. So I just copy and paste from a document. And I've also found that I work really well when I'm commuting. So if I'm on a bus or a train or a plane, I can get a lot of writing done, or I can get projects done really quickly. I'm really focused. So yeah. I did this experiment where I went 3 or 4 days. I just went on the Bangkok SkyTrain, and I'm just, at the back of the SkyTrain, just working on my laptop. I go from one end to the other, and then I go back. I turn around and go back. I was writing more than 2,000 words in a single hour that way. Wow. And I was like, wow, there's really something here. And so, like, if I see something where there's not a problem, I see an opportunity to gain leverage. And that's the way to look at it. If you're looking at this as like a systems engineer, or I don't know what the proper term is, a leverage engineer. If you see something that's causing issue in your life, that's a chance to install something better, a better operating system, or maybe it's an app, or maybe it's just a change of environment, like I did.
Yeah, that's a good point. It really depends on what works for you. Like when I'm here in San Diego, it's like I have the same issue. Is like I feel like some things I do better when I'm actually at home. And then other things, I need to be in a coffee shop with people around me with, like, just anything, like just not being here. And then, Yeah, like I remember I was wanted to create this website and I just kept procrastinating it. And then I got on this train. I was just going to LA on the Amtrak and I did the whole thing in like 2 hours, like everything that I've been putting off for weeks. I just did it, got it all done on the train because there's actually Wi-Fi and all that too. So it's that's kind of one of those not what is it like a good problem to have. Like you don't know where to go work on any given day.
Yeah, I mean, it is a problem, but it's also an opportunity. And whenever I have a problem or a challenge, it's an opportunity for growth. And
Yeah.
there's still times when I encounter frustration or anxiety. Like I'm going to Malaysia tonight. I plan on traveling a lot. Kind of really quickly, and I'm a little bit nervous. Like I'll be able to run things or not. Whether I'll be able to run things or not. Whether I'll still be able to book podcast interviews every day.
Yeah.
There's always that anxiety. There's always going to be those challenges, but it's always a chance to grow and take things to the next level. And I want to add that, as humans, we're not computers. We're not meant to run at high speeds continuously for long periods of time. We're not always efficient or effective at everything we do. So it's very important to be able to step back and look at yourself in a self-analyzing way. And I think, I don't know what the term is, maybe it's mindfulness,
Hmm.
but I think mindfulness is great because you can go in and you can look at yourself. It's like a dual consciousness where you're able to look at your own thoughts and your own actions in kind of a self-analyzing way and organize them. And I think that's very critical for someone who's in this place and they want to kind of rise above it and kind of advance to the next level in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about traveling because we get into all this business stuff, and some people that listen to my podcast actually aren't interested in the business stuff, which is I'm always like, what? Come on, that's the most important thing. But people want to hear about travel stories, and you've been all over the place. I mean, you've done more traveling than most people I know. Can you just talk about like a couple of really cool or interesting or maybe even scary stories?
Yeah, sure. So I was just actually working on a post this week, actually, about my trip across Mexico, where I was cycling and hitchhiking across Baja California. And I'm not sure where to start, but I basically, like, I connected with this guy through couch surfing, and he was driving his hippie van from Toronto to Patagonia, South America.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, "Hey, do you want to join?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, I want to join." Not the whole way, but at least a
Yeah.
little of the way. So he was already in Ensenada, and I rode my bicycle down to Ensenada to catch up with him. And he's like, "Oh, I don't want to take my van across, to the mainland on the ferry. It's too expensive." So he decided to turn around, and I was stuck there back in Ensenada. And I was like, should I go back or should I just take my bicycle and keep going south and try to hitchhike,
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to go to this place, Catavina Desert. And so before I left on that trip, I said, all right, I'm going to set aside a budget of $300 for this trip. I'm not going to touch any ATMs. And, I just made it work. And I started cycling and I realized, damn, this is going to be really far. It's more than 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
And so I hitchhiked where I could. I negotiated with innkeepers. I say, I can't spend $100 for this room. Is there anything else we can do? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. You can stay in the staff room. There's a couch here. And I just kind of negotiated and bartered with people. I approached people at gas stations saying, I'm going south. Can I go with you? And then my ultimate destination, which I really wanted to take this trip for, was Catavina Desert because I wanted to rock climb there. And I get there, and then suddenly it's about 6:30 p.m. and there's nowhere to stay. There's this one resort. It's like $200 per night. And they're like, oh, you can go to this place outside of town. It's like 3 kilometers outside of town. So it's pitch black, and I'm going to this place, and I'm going down this dirt road, and there's nobody around. There's no lights or anything. It's just pitch black. I'm just out there in nature, all this wildlife, and who knows what kind of watching me. And then I see this kind of old, like, abandoned rancho, and I'm like, oh god, this is really spooky. There's nobody around. There's no one
Yeah.
here. I'm like, hello, hello. Where like wolf is gonna come out of nowhere and attack, and I'm like, okay, I have no options here, so I'm just gonna turn this door and see what happens. I just turn the door, and it slowly creaks open, and then I turn the light on. I don't know what I'm gonna find, and there's all these like beds just laid out there, like different size beds.
Yeah.
I have a photo I can send you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my god, I feel like Goldilocks here. The
Yeah.
wolves are waiting somewhere. And I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna try my luck. I'm gonna sleep here tonight. And I was half asleep, half terrified
Yeah.
that night. Like I made sure the doors locked tightly, and it turned out all right, but
It's so random. Wow.
yeah, it was a really interesting experience. I love it though, I don't know. It really wakes you up and it takes you out of your shell for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then you can do that. Like if you get stuck somewhere, you're good to go.
Yeah, I had a lot of really cool experiences, and that it's kind of like I really enjoy pushing myself just to my edge.
Yeah.
And anytime I can do that, I really feel alive. I took a sailboat, I sailed across the South China Sea. I did a motorbike trip across kind of half of Cambodia and all of Vietnam. I did a bunch of hitchhiking all around Taiwan and Malaysia. I really enjoy it because when we're working on our businesses, we're traveling and doing all this stuff. We get so stuck in our heads and stuck in these routines. And whenever I can shake myself up from that routine in a small way or a big way, I find it really makes me grow and I learn a lot. So.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And you mentioned mindfulness, and I think that's what it kind of forces you to be mindful. And for me, what that does, and I've said this before, is that it sort of slows time down because your mind, you have to process a whole new, like whether it's scenery or just an experience, and everything starts to slow down. And I think that's where traveling can be so therapeutic, and it's such a great way to kind of refresh your mind.
Yeah, exactly. There's a saying, I don't know if I recall it correctly, but I think it goes like this: monotony dulls your perception of time, while novelty unfolds it.
Yeah, there you go. Sounds good to me. So I've got some more questions. I know we don't want to, I told you that we could be easily on here for a few hours, but we'll try to make it quick, but I'm really curious about some things. So
Yeah, sure.
one is, now you put up some pictures like of yourself going around Southeast Asia. It's obviously hot. You've got your shirt off, and you seem to stay in like amazing shape no matter how long you've been traveling or where you are. How do you stay fit when you're on the road?
Kevin, I've been an athlete since I was 4 or 5, and I've tried a bunch of stuff. I'll go through phases. So, one, I think I just wrote an email about this to my newsletter. First, you have to define what it is you really want. If you don't have compelling reasons for doing something, like say, it's the new year, I should go to the gym, I should get in shape. If your will is based on a weak foundation, you're not going to follow up with it. So whenever I train or I try to get into shape, I always have a reason. Like I have a specific goal, and I say, this is what I want. So I'll go through different phases. Like when I went to Southeast Asia 2 years ago, I went for 6 months. I came back, I lost about 14 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back to San Diego, I said, all right, I want to gain 20 to 25 pounds. I want to be 170 pounds. And then I did that. Just over a month, I regained all of the weight and I put on weight. And I can tell you how I did it, but I think it really comes down to right now, I'm not going through that kind of training phase. Yeah. If I go to the fitness room, I just want to train because I want to keep my energy level high. I want to be productive with my work. And that is totally different than what I went through at that time. The way I train now is totally different than when I went through that time. So one, it starts with what your goals are. And when I was gaining weight, for example, I know that I had to put myself on this regimen where I'm overfeeding myself. I have to eat like a whole chicken every day. I eat like a huge plate of food for breakfast. I'm eating, I don't know how much, like 6,000 calories a day. And I'm only working out one time per week. So it's about every 5 or 6 days. And I'm doing, muscle failure workouts just so I can tear down the tissue and let it rebuild. But the workouts I'm doing now, I'm here in Bangkok, I'll just go on the treadmill and I'm just working on my laptop while I'm on the treadmill because I want to stay sharp. I want to stay lean. So Kevin, it really starts with what your goals are, and ask yourself, why do I want to get into shape? Why do I want to gain muscle, or why do I want to lose weight? And then come up with a list of reasons why.
Yeah.
The first obstacle, the first hurdle is adherence. So if you can make it super simple for you to do it, then you're much more likely to stick to it.
Right.
So I hope that's a good answer. I have all kinds of ways I can break down this topic. I mean, one, like metabolism is a big thing. So if you eat the same foods each day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, your metabolism gets very efficient. It breaks down food very quickly. Mm-hmm. I could go on and on about this topic, but I think it really starts with, asking why do I want this and why am I going to stay in shape? And the easier you can make it, the better, So.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, my trips to Asia have been more like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. So it's a little different, but I come back and I'm like you. I'm like, I lost 14 pounds. I don't even have that to lose. Like it's crazy because it's like like all the meals there, it's just like rice and, a little bit of protein. And then you just kind of get used to eating that and then you sort of adapt to it. But you're right. It's all kind of like if you really focus on it, you can do what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I carry protein shakes with me everywhere I go. But it's definitely easier to focus on the physique when you're back home or when you're kind of more settled. So when I'm back home, I have a whole routine. I must have like 10 different supplements. No, more than that. I have a picture where I have like 14 different supplements that I take. And, I make a shake every morning when I'm back home. I haven't been back home in almost a year, but, I have this blueberry shake where I add acai powder. I add super green superfoods. I add a whole bunch of like, stuff to it, healthy stuff to it. And it really gets me going in the mornings.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Now, so on that topic, what's your view on having a home base versus being a permanent traveler or perpetual tourist?
It's interesting. It's kind of tough to find a groove at some points. But, one thing I've been doing a lot lately because I've been spending about a month or two in each place, I've really been experimenting with a lot of different ways to do it. I don't really like traveling around too fast. I've done quite a bit of that. When I was in the Philippines, I did a bunch of island hopping. But I found that I was always rushing to go to the next place. I was rushing to get on one tour after another. So one thing I like to do is kind of just set up a base for maybe a month, maybe 2 months, and then you can make a lot of trips from there. And I find it works really well because you kind of get the best of both worlds. You have a home base, but then you also get to get out of town every now and then, maybe for 4 or 5 days, explore a new country. And, one thing that works kind of well, I did this when I was in Ho Chi Minh City. Have you been to Ho Chi Minh City, Kevin?
Yeah, yeah.
So if you know Ho Chi Minh, I mean, it's very like crowded, it's very cramped, it's very polluted. You have to wear a mask when you go outside.
Yeah.
So I was like, I really need to get out of here. What I did is I read this book, Get Paid for Your Pad, by my friend Jasper. I'm actually meeting him today.
Yeah, I was on his podcast, actually, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm actually meeting with him in a couple hours here in Bangkok.
Tell him I said hi.
Yeah, I will. So what I did is I put my apartment, I had this condo for like 2 months. I put it up on Airbnb.
Yeah.
Whenever it was rented out, I would just go on a trip somewhere. That paid for the trip, basically.
Yep.
And now that I'm in Bangkok, I'm kind of doing the same thing, and it keeps my productivity high, keeps my enjoyment levels high. I'll go on like, exploring around Thailand. And there's this ASEAN pass that we were talking about before the show where you can, I think for $160, you get 10 credits. And you can fly up to 10 times in 1 month for $160, which is amazing. So if you're in Thailand, there's like 10 different destinations in Thailand, and in the neighboring countries, there are other destinations. You can just fly there for, however many days, and you can fly back to Bangkok.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess if you take anything from this, I mean, there's a ton of options out there.
Right.
We mentioned Airbnb. We mentioned this ASEAN pass. There's all kinds of things. There's a sharing economy that's giving you all of this leverage. And if you can get creative and find ways to make it work for you and whatever it is, it's really awesome what you can do.
Yeah. The Airbnb thing is great. I've used that a ton here in San Diego, and it allows me to travel and get expenses paid. And now I'm in my new, the place I'm in now, the complex, they kind of put the kibosh on all of that, Airbnb and everything. And they threatened everybody. If you get caught, they're going to sue you and kick you out and all this stuff. So,
yeah, you can't continue down that path. What they're doing. I mean, they're in such an their philosophy is so outmoded and outdated.
Yeah,
I think
Yeah,
the conservative way of doing things is just not. It's not going to continue. And if the more adaptable you are, the more flexible you are, the more you're willing to embrace innovation and change, the further you're going to go in this new environment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I figured out a way to get around it so I can't get caught. So I'm still doing it just in a different way. But
I look, like when I was in Saigon, I was renting a place that I was basically renting out.
Yeah.
And in my lease, it said that I couldn't rent it out for more than 2 weeks.
Okay.
So anything less than that was okay. So I was very upfront with my landlord. I said, hey, I got some people that I know that are coming over. I'm going to go out of town. And, it wasn't a problem at all. Yeah, so sometimes in the lease itself, it'll say, something like that. And, but it really comes down to you really got to think outside of the box. Like there's this guy, Tynan, who I mentioned, where he lives rent-free in San Francisco in an RV, So
Yeah.
he can park wherever he wants. He can travel wherever he wants.
Yeah.
He has a moped to get around. And he's basically living for free,
Yeah.
And you can do that. if you have an apartment, you could also have an RV you can get for like $3,000, and you can rent out your place and stay in an RV for a few days, you know?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Really cool. Well, one more thing I want to get to before we kind of wrap up, and more along the personal level, is something that I always seem to bring up on just about every show I do. So, what's your take on relationships on the road? Like, you travel a lot, and you're going from city to city. You just said you're normally not in a place more than a couple months. How do you do that? Like, what's your philosophy there on relationships, and do you prefer short-term kind of deals, or what's kind of the ultimate scenario?
Oh, we're talking about romantic relationships.
Oh, romantic. Yeah. Romantic relationship. Yeah, not like buddies or anything.
Okay. This trip's been about 10 months now. I think I've had kind of 4 official girlfriends in like 4 different countries, 5 different countries actually, and several other, well, maybe like, I don't know, 5 or 10 other women that I've dated on top of that. At first I was kind of just like, I'm going to try to treat this like a normal relationship, but that never really works out too well. So, you can't just say like, oh, I'm going to try to make this work and I'm going to forget about everything else. You kind of have to listen to your head a little bit too.
Right.
So, I think everyone's going to die someday, and planning for the future never really seems to work very well. And I think you really have to enjoy today and tomorrow as much as possible.
Yeah.
And not look far ahead into a year or 5 years. It's really impossible. You kind of have a vision and a direction for what you want to go. And I think a lot of, women aren't too comfortable with that, but, if you just have to be upfront with them, it's because your purpose and your mission in life should always come before your relationship, because that's always the way it should work. And if you're going to be in a relationship, it's kind of that expression where it's 2 people looking outward in the same direction versus looking inward towards each other.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, you have to be kind of have that disclosure, saying like, this is how I want to live my life. If you were working a 9 to 5, it might be difficult for us to be together. But as long as they understand and the risks and how the relationship's going to progress, that makes it easier, I guess. When I first started traveling in South America, I wasn't trying to have any relationships at all. And I looked at, the fact that I was traveling as kind of like a convenient excuse to move on.
Yeah.
But, it's definitely a challenge, Kevin, just like anything else. But you just have to be true to you at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, I like what you're saying. It makes total sense. And I think it is a challenge no matter what you're going for. If you are someone that's going to be in one place for 40 years and you want to find one person for that whole time, then it's still a challenge. So it's never like super easy. So.
Yeah, and I have a friend, Johnny Ward, who he's on a mission to, I guess, travel to every country in the world. But he also has a condo here in Bangkok, and he has a girlfriend here in Bangkok. And, she's been waiting for him for like the last 4 months or so, I think, while he travels around South and Central America, hitting every single country.
Yeah. And
they're back together now in Bangkok, but he's about to leave again to go to Africa in a month or 2, I think.
Yeah.
And she knows they're in love, but she fully understands that, this is my mission in life. And I think a good girl, the right girl, is not going to try to stop you. She's going to be supportive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Well, that's it's really good stuff. Now, so you're working on openworldmag.com now. Can you talk about that just a little bit, like what the site's about and what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. So Open World Magazine, it's a podcast. We also have the book, which you mentioned earlier in the show, buyyourown.island.com. And if you go to buyyourownisland.com/audio-book, you can download the audio book for free. If you could put that in the show notes, that would be great.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Open World Magazine, right now it's a podcast and a blog where I try to find the most inspirational people who are doing extraordinary things all around the world and, kind of pick their brain. Next week I'm interviewing this guy, Tony Mangan, who's an ultra-marathon runner who actually ran across the entire world.
Wow.
And I want to say, like, wow, that's so amazing. And I want to know, how did you do it? What did you encounter on the way? What was going through your mind? Why did you do this? And what's your unique experience like? What did you learn from all of this? And that's what it's really about, because I want to find these top achievers and really pick their brain and kind of get to know what makes them tick. The first podcast episode, for example, I interviewed this guy, Mike Spencer Bound, who's been traveling since 1991. And he's been like living in the bush and doing all these things. And he's really gained a very unique perspective as a result of his experiences. And I want to know about that. I want to pick his brain and I want to see what he's learned.
Awesome.
because I want to grow, and it's really about helping my readers and my listeners grow and make progress in their own journey so that they can be extraordinary themselves. Oh, and one other plug, if I can, Kevin.
Yeah.
This month, March, I'm actually offering one-on-one coaching, which I never really do this, but I really enjoy getting to know listeners and readers. So if you're interested in one-on-one coaching with me, I'm offering a very special deal. It's just $30 for 30 minutes. I thought about offering free consultation, but if my time is very limited and I don't want to get tire kickers or time wasters. So I've made it affordable to everyone. So if you have any sticking points or challenges that you're dealing with, it's a great chance for you to get some perspective and to get some coaching. I think it's a great chance to really accelerate things. So if you're interested in that, maybe you can put my email. It's danny@openworldag.com.
Okay, yeah, I'll throw that in the show notes. Is there anything on your site about that, or is that too new?
Nothing on my site. It's kind of only people on my newsletter or listeners to this podcast can get access to that.
Awesome.
I don't want to get flooded with people. I just want to work with like a handful of people and just kind of get to know them and help them with whatever challenges they're facing.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, man. Well, hey, Danny, it's been great having you on the show. Yeah, thanks for taking the time and coming on and sharing all your stories and perspective. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Freedom Lovin' Podcast. To break free today, head on over to freedomlovin.com and download our free guide. 7 practical tips to living free in an unfree world.